Hey everyone, welcome or welcome back to MYC Uncensored's Women in STEM podcast series. Today I'm joined by SJ Price, a very knowledgeable AI lawyer, as she shares her insights on how AI has changed the way jobs work. So without further ado, let's get into it. If maybe you wanted to just give a bit of info about who you were, maybe your background a little bit, how you grew up, maybe what your occupation is, and maybe some of your contributions to STEM. So we can obviously split it up. I know that was quite a few questions. Maybe we can just start about introducing who you are, maybe a bit about your background.
Sure. Thanks, Anika. Hello, everyone. My name is Schellie-Jayne Price, or SJ, as everyone tends to call me. I am an AI lawyer. So, this is an occupation that never existed when I went to law school. And that, I guess, makes me a woman in STEM, even though, as someone at high school, I was never very good at any of the STEM subjects. In fact, Anika, when I passed maths at my leaving, I cried. It was such a relief. So, to be doing a podcast about women in STEM is something that I could never have imagined at your age.
Amazing. Would you be okay with telling us a little bit about some of your contributions to STEM, or maybe some of the contributions that you would say kind of stand out within such a male-dominated field?
Sure, sure thing. I'd like to start by sharing how I ended up in this world of AI. And I don't know about you, Annika, but when was the last moment you saw something that made you sort of gasp with amazement?
I mean, I think usually on a daily basis, there's always something that surprises me. But I think, like with absolute amazement, maybe a couple weeks ago, probably something that maybe I was doing an assessment or I saw something I was researching, and then I came across something because especially within the field of AI, there's always something more to learn and something more to see that's super exciting. So yeah, definitely, usually very often.
Well, Annika, I remember the first moment I gasped at AI. And this is quite a long time ago now, but it was when I saw on YouTube Watson, the AI Watson, IBM's Watson, win the game show Jeopardy
Oh,
against the human
wow.
competitors. And at that moment, because it was natural language processing, I realized that this was going to be a massive change and opportunity for those of us who work in knowledge work, such as lawyers, and there's other people too, but certainly lawyers. And I wanted to be part of that. I wanted to be part of the opportunity and leaning into what technology was possible. So I contacted IBM and suggested that we do a proof of concept, a POC with IBM. And I was going to be the legal subject matter expert and create the training data for us to train Watson. Now, you need to understand, Anika, that this was before transformer technology, which underpins everything we're all talking about, was available. And
Mhm.
then it was what's called recurrent neural networks. And so we did this proof of concept. It was very successful in delivering really good results. The difficulty which made it economically impracticable was because, as a subject matter expert, I had to annotate hundreds and hundreds of examples. And that simply was cost prohibitive. So it couldn't be commercialized. And then I got access to GPT-2. So now we're on ChatGPT, right? And this is, for those of you who are techie, you had to use a Jupyter notebook to be able to use GPT-2. And although it was much more basic than anything we're using now. At that moment, I realized that the very difficult computing problem of natural language processing had been solved by transformer technology. And that's certainly what we've seen. When GPT-2, 3 came out, I had access to that. And I was running use cases for legal opportunities with GPT-3 and showing people, right? But most people would go, oh, yeah, but it's not always accurate. I can't do my job, can't do the things that I want to do. But of course, you realized, and I realized at that time, it was just going to progress. And then suddenly ChatGPT was released, and I think it was the chat function, the ability for people to interact back and forward with an AI in the way that we interact with humans that made a massive amount of difference. And at that time, suddenly, everyone wanted to talk about AI. And I went from being the crazy AI woman to being someone that people wanted to talk to about artificial intelligence. So that's the backstory of how I became involved in AI. In my daily job at Stirling Rose as the AI partner, we do lots of things. We help organizations implement AI. We help them manage the risks. We help them set up governance structures. We evaluate and review terms and conditions for AI. And also, we help organizations to build AI in a way that is lawful and responsible and is going to enable them to sell their products into other jurisdictions and comply with the law. And that's super fun and very exciting because what people are doing is quite amazing. Humans are unbelievably innovative.
Absolutely. I think that story is very, very interesting. And definitely with the rise of ChatGPT, like I think that was just like a domino effect. There are so many AI chatbots now, and it's just so easy to access those things. So we can move on to more of your story, and maybe how you found your passion and ultimately chose the career you're doing right now.
So that's such a great question, Anika, because within the law, I've had many different careers.
Mhm.
So when I graduated from law school, my first job was in banking. And then I moved and I worked for a Supreme Court judge as a judge's associate. Once I'd done that, I left and I practiced in litigation, which is like going to court cases, commercial litigation. Then I moved into mergers and acquisitions, focusing on the resources industry. At that time, my husband needed to move to London to do some further study. So when we went to London, I became an in-house lawyer, which is a lawyer who doesn't work for a law firm but works for a corporation. And that's how I started my in-house career. And my in-house career has covered quite a lot of my career, over 17 years in-house. And the reason I left in-house was to join Stirling Rose and to set up the AI practice in our law firm. And our law firm's a very interesting law firm because we practice right on the edge of emerging technology and the law. We practice in the grey area where the law is often not created with technology in mind, but nevertheless, the law that exists still applies. And when I hear people say, oh, we need laws to govern artificial intelligence, the truth is there are a lot of laws that already do govern artificial intelligence, but they just don't have the words AI in them.
Absolutely. I think that's really
So to say, and I think it's really important in a world that is changing quite dramatically because of AI, because of technology. Expect, Anika, in your career that you may do lots of different things. In fact, expect that when you've been in the workforce for 20 plus years, you might be doing a job that doesn't even exist today.
absolutely.
So the ability to think about the future, to always be learning, to have adaptive resilience is going to be incredibly important for
Right.
the future.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's really, I think a very big thing is that a lot of people have misconceptions that when they're young and they choose a career path, they have to stick to that path. But I think it's so, so common to switch career paths because you realize you have a newfound passion. And as humans, it's so easy to learn that you have a newfound passion in something else because as like an 18 to 20-year-old, you really haven't experienced as much as you could. So absolutely, I think it's really insightful that you've told us that. In terms of being a woman in STEM, obviously, I would say the way that your career progressed, it wouldn't be super in depth within the STEM field, but I would say now it is. Definitely, when I saw AI lawyer, I was super excited and super interested. But what would you say is a big challenge you faced as being a woman in STEM or being a woman in the workforce?
My experience and discussions with other women suggest that when women are developing and moving into their leadership sphere, something odd happens to them in the feedback loop as they are becoming a leader. And that interruption to the feedback loop is quite curious. And if you talk to women, they've all had it, something odd happens. And I can give you a lot of examples in my feedback loop. Even when I was a student at law school, I remember going out on a I guess you'd call it a cadetship, and being told at the end of the cadetship that I would never make a lawyer. And of course, now I've been a lawyer for almost 30 years, right? So you have really odd things happen. And one of the great support systems is to have a really good network around you that you can sense test when those really odd things happen. And they don't stop when you're young. I recently was at a conference on a panel, and we were encouraged to have a bit of frisson, a bit of, buzzing on the panel. And part of what we do at Stirling Rose is we think about the future, and then we think quite deeply about what that future might be and the various futures that there might be, and how we as citizens need to be involved in that discussion and be involved in that shaping. And obviously, I said some things about that did not resonate with someone in the audience who, was saying quite surprising things to me, and took me aback a little bit. What was absolutely delightful is there was someone visiting from the United States, an invited keynote speaker, who jumped up and, made commentary back. So having a trusted network, and it's not just women, it's men too, a trusted network to really support women. So when they're just odd things that happen, and you get such a surprise when it happens. When it does happen, to have a network that can help interrupt that weird interference with the leadership feedback loop, I think's really important. The other thing really valuable is networking. So if I was to tell my younger self, my Anika age self, what's the most important thing? It would be networking, right? Because most jobs seem to be through networks. And I never understood that when I was young, Anika. And I know it feels very pedestrian, but it's been incredibly valuable. And I want to I want to just say my networks have been unbelievably important in my transition from an in-house lawyer to a law firm partner in a completely new area of legal practice.
Amazing. Yeah, I think that's really interesting. Actually, something I wanted to ask you right after, but you definitely covered it, is how, if you had any mentors when you were growing up, or obviously they could have changed, but how they kind of played a role in how you chose your career path. Because obviously being a woman in the workplace isn't that easy, but I would say having a mentor might alleviate those pressures. And I just wanted to see from your side of view how it affected the way that you chose your career.
Anika, I regret that until recently I never really had a mentor. And most recently I've been getting mentoring by stealth. Particularly, I have wonderful tech mentors. And I would really encourage anyone, get yourself a tech mentor. And bizarrely, I want to share my story of how I got one of my tech mentors.
Absolutely.
When I started being interested in artificial intelligence, and the area of artificial intelligence covers quite a broad range of models and types. But the one that I'm particularly interested in, and the type that underpins all of the recent developments, is called machine learning. So when I started becoming interested in machine learning, I was at the library and I'd taken out a book on machine learning. And I was in the elevator clutching my book on machine learning. And this guy got in, right? Never seen him before. And he looked at me and he looked at the book and he looked at me again and he said, "Are you interested in machine learning?" And my inside voice is going, "Duh, what do you think? I've got a book." But anyway, I said, "Yes." And he said, "Well, I'm from the Perth Machine Learning Group and we're looking for women." I think he meant to go to the Perth Machine Learning Group. At least I'm hoping that's what it was. So I fell in with a group of data scientists, wonderful people at the Perth Machine Learning Group, and a massive number of people who've mentored me either formally or by stealth in my journey. And the future is going to be multidisciplinary. And one of the challenges for women is, one, how many of us know data scientists? And of those data scientists, there's only about, I think it's 11 to 20% of data scientists are women. So your ability to find a data scientist to be your mentor is limited. To find a female data scientist is even more challenging. But finding one is absolute gold because in the future, I think we're all going to be lawyers and technologists, doctors and technologists, business people and technologists, economists and technologists, veterinarian surgeons and technologists. So being able to speak across domains, particularly in relation to the tech domain, unbelievably important.
Absolutely. I think it's really interesting, and I think it's very important to have mentors because they kind of give you guidance, but it's not their path they're showing you, it's your path. And I think it can save time knowing that you have someone who's kind of gone through some of the same struggles and can give you some insights. So yeah, I was very interested in to know what your answer was that.
So
So
absolutely get mentors, right? Get mentors. Because
that's
in the end, mentors can often morph into sponsors that help you get opportunities and jobs.
Absolutely. And in the end, as you said, networking as well. So definitely
It
very
is.
important. This might be less off the topic of what we just spoke about, and I might butcher this, but I understand you're a part of the WADSIH advisory board. Could you tell us a little bit about what it is and how you decided that this was one of the opportunities you wanted to be a part of?
Thank you for mentioning that, Anika. So WADSI, WA Data Science Innovation Hub, is an entity that is sponsored by the West Australian Government with the vision of helping organisations in Western Australia identify what are the tremendous opportunities that artificial intelligence affords and enable them to grasp and help them to leverage those opportunities. Well, of course, from the day dot, I've seen the opportunities from artificial intelligence. So I absolutely wanted to be part of the advisory board and to support that mission. Now, of course, I have an additional perspective, and it is really why I left in-house practice to join Stirling Rose, and that is we have a desire to make sure that the use of artificial intelligence is beneficial to humans and beneficial to our society. So we want to make sure that not only do businesses and organisations leverage the opportunity, but they do so in a way that is lawful and responsible.
Yeah, I think a big thing with AI is actually it's not spoken about too much, but is the ethical, like how ethical it is, especially with legal considerations as well. And I think that's a really big restraint for a lot of AI companies, but definitely working around that is very important. But I see so much potential in AI. So as you said at the start, you are an AI lawyer, and I think that's one of the most unique jobs I've heard of, especially I think definitely as time goes on, we'll start hearing AI close a lot with different jobs that were more, I guess, well known without the AI part. So as an AI lawyer, what would you say your job entails and what's your favorite part about it?
My job entails predominantly four aspects. So, aspect one is going into organizations, giving them a bit of, like a masterclass or some training about what machine learning is and what are the things to look out for? What are your risks? What are the questions you need to ask? And how do you manage that in a way that makes sense? So, it's risk managed use of AI. The second thing we do is go in and help organisations put in place governance structures. So that might be policies, procedures, review of risk matrices, determination of risk appetite statements for artificial intelligence, control mechanisms, all the way down to system cards and data cards to manage artificial intelligence use. The third thing we do is that when people want artificial intelligence, the way they get it into their organization often is they procure it. So they enter into a contract. And of course, they want to know, well, what are the things I need to look at in that contract? So that's another thing that we do. And the fourth thing, which is my personal favorite, is when organizations are building something in-house and they want from the get-go, from the foundation, to build it in a way that is responsible, ethical, and lawful.
Absolutely.
And I like that because I build machine learning models.
Amazing.
So
So
it's very exciting to see what other organizations are doing. Now, I don't build anything amazing like these organizations are building. I might build a computer vision model, or I work at the university, Murdoch University in Perth at the law school. And every year I teach an intensive unit called Technology in the Future of Law. Last year, I created a chatbot to talk to my students about their assignment. So it was a Socratic tutor. And I thought that was a cool thing to do because it meant my students could talk to a digital twin of me, of SJ, 24/7, right? Never had a bad day, never sleeps, never sick, and can talk to all of them at the same time. In fact, someone suggested to me, because my name is Schellie-Jayne Price and my initials are SJP, that I should have called it Chat SJP.
Yeah,
So
that's
there's
really
lots of
cool.
interesting things that you can do, and having built some machine learning models and use them, it's really a very useful basis to go in and help other organizations to use AI in a way that makes sense.
Absolutely. So, what would you say your favorite part of the job is? Or even if the whole job is your favorite part, that's also absolutely acceptable.
I think my favorite part of the job is seeing how inventive humans can be. Humans are massively innovative. What they are using technology for is incredible. And it makes me very happy to see amazing things that add value and benefit humans.
Absolutely. Final question, actually. Do you have any words of wisdom to the future generations of young females who are maybe unsure or afraid to enter a STEM field because they see a lack of female representation or just don't feel comfortable going into a field where they don't see other people like them?
Yes, it's difficult, isn't it? My first recommendation would be find a mentor, and it can be a man. It doesn't have to be a woman, but find a tech mentor. And the other thing is, I would say lean in because, when I started this journey and I used to go to the Perth Machine Learning Group meetings, if I understood 5% of what they said, it was a really good night. So I spent a lot of the time, at least initially, not really understanding anything. But that adaptive resilience, that ability to persist, to learn, to engage with people, to network, to ask questions, to be curious, to try things out is going to be incredibly important. So get a tech mentor. Because it doesn't matter what you do, even if you're not in STEM, you will be touched by STEM. You will absolutely be touched by technology. And even if you don't know the answers, if you have a network and you know who to ring, you'll be absolutely fine. So that would be the first thing I'd say about STEM. The second thing is be curious and lean in. One of the reasons I started building machine learning models is not because I have any desire to be or capability really to be a data scientist, but that's how I learn, right? And in doing that, there were a lot of failures, Anika. So being prepared at least to have, and I like to call it interim failure, being accepting of interim failure can be very valuable on this journey. And the truth is, I learn a lot more from the technology I tried to build that failed than I actually learned from the technology I built that succeeded. So failure can be a very helpful step along the journey. Thirdly, expect that you will be learning throughout your career and your life. So commit to lifelong learning because these systems, they're just changing and developing all the time. It's very hard to keep up. And finally, I would say be adaptive because when I'm at university and sometimes there are anxious parents who come with their children, what should I do? What degree should my child do? What's the best career? And the truth is, I feel pretty relaxed about it because I'm like, oh, choose something you like and you enjoy and that you can do. Because the truth is, you're likely going to do something quite different in the course of your career. And even in law, I've worked with many people who have law degrees but are not practicing as lawyers. They're working in commercial or public affairs or supply chain or investment or economics, all sorts of politics, all sorts of places. So that ability to take whatever degree you decide to do and be willing to stretch it into other areas where there are opportunities, that's a really important future skill.
Absolutely, 100%. I think all that advice was definitely incredibly insightful. And I think it's something that's very hard to get unless you talk to someone who's experienced it. So thank you so much for your time. Is there anything else you wanted to add before we just quickly wrap up?
No, I think that's fine, Anika. I don't have anything else unless there's anything that's missing from your perspective.
I think we covered everything. And I think even though this interview was very short, it was incredibly insightful. So thank you so much for your time.
All right,
So
Anika,
much.
thank you. Bye for
Thank you.
now.
Bye.